and welcome to Ask Ben, the wisdom and witticisms of Benjamin Franklin. In this program, we attempt to answer your questions as we think Ben would. Now, I have a letter here today from a Mr. Edward Loney of St. Augustine, Florida. Home of the proverbial fountain of youth. Mr. Loney writes, Dear Ben, what is the secret to a long and productive life? Well, Mr. Loney, if there's a secret out there, nobody let me in on it. Funny you should ask that question, however. Ever since I returned from France, people have been telling me, or saying to me, Ben, you look like you've aged since we last saw you. Well, I left Philadelphia in 1776 on my diplomatic mission to Paris, France. I was 70 then, and I returned to Philadelphia in 1785. Do the math, genius. I have gotten older, as you can see. I even haven't had time to unpack. But perhaps it's true. I admit I may have aged a bit, like fine wine. However, I'm afraid I'm just not the same lusty young whippersnapper that I used to be, that's for sure. Nowadays, I wake up in the morning and I reach for the newspaper. If my name's not on the obituary page, I get up. You see, Mr. Loney, life's tragedy is that we get old too soon and wise too late. It seems that many people die at 25, but then aren't buried until they're 75. Hey, that's pretty good. You should be writing this stuff down. I guess I don't mind being old so much as I mind being fat and old. But I've always advocated a healthy lifestyle, at least until I arrived at Gay Paris, but that's a story for another time. For instance, I gave up smoking at midlife. Here's a joke for you, Mr. Loney. Why are the stems of the tavern pipes so long? Answer, the Surgeon General says stay away from tobacco. You see, because the tobacco goes in here and then, you have the long stem. Never mind. That's an 18th century joke. Now, my erstwhile colleague in the Continental Congress, a Mr. John Adams, he and I once argued over whether to open or close a window, in a crowded room, in a crowded inn. We were both sharing the same bed in the same room, and Mr. Adams believed, as did most of the medical community at the time, that it was healthier to close the window against the midnight vapors. Now, I, on the other hand, held to the position, and I still do, that it was healthier to breathe in fresh air than the stale exhalations of a closed room, especially if you're sharing the same room with Adams. Anyway, by the time I discoursed at length upon my fresh air theory, Mr. Adams had fallen asleep, so I opened the window. Of course, I was famous, or infamous, as the case may be, for taking my daily air baths when I was representing the colonies in England, before the Revolution. I would read my correspondence first thing in the morning, in the buff, and then I would take a morning stroll in the Altogether, if you know what I mean. Very healthful. Good thing it was foggy London town. But I don't recommend that you do that, Mr. Loney. Your neighbors might be scandalized, and they will probably think that you're, loony. And they'll call the cops. Well, Mr. Loney, by my rambling digressions, you must perceive by now that I have indeed grown old. However, I'll leave you with this little nugget of wisdom from the pen of Poor Richard. Wish not so much to live long as to live well. And Richard Saunders had a knack for pithy sayings, I must admit. Well, we have time for one more letter. This one is from a Mr. Art Vandelay of Vandelay Industries. Mr. Vandelay writes, Dear Ben, What is the proper tipping etiquette at an upscale restaurant like Mendy's? Well, Mr. Vandelay, I always leave a tip, no matter how bad the service. Here's one you can use the next time you're out. Tell the waiter, don't sow your seed all in one place. Scatter it. You'll get a better crop yield. No charge for that one. Well, that's all we have time for. Thank you for watching. And be sure to write or email your questions to askben@bcarleton@gcls.org before I get any older. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to take an air bath. So, you stay healthy. Eat an apple. Bye.